It is my pleasure to introduce you to my series, Hoda's Career Info. My name is Hoda, career and academic coach at Night Career Fit. Coaching is all about storytelling, helping you to envision and tell your story your way. I put this series together to share stories of inspiring career people from across the globe. I hope their stories motivate you to envision your career story, discover your road to success, or recast your career path. And more importantly, that you love these career stories as much as I do. Our guest today is Jim Peacock, the principal of Peak Careers Consulting.
What we have to do is challenge ourselves to say, what does this person in front of me need? Not what do I want to give everybody. Intentional serendipity. It's got a play to it, but it really is, there's a lot packed into that. You've got to be intentional, you got to take some kind of action, and then you got to be willing and open to discovering things by accident. Continue that learning hat. Keep thinking about what else do you need to know in order to help your clients. You got to get yourself in that stretch zone. That's the key.
Thanks again for joining Hoda's Career Info, your career program where guests from across the globe share career tips and personal stories to help you successfully navigate your career. Watch, listen, and learn. And remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me, Hoda Kilani, on social media for more career info. More importantly, make sure you have that very important career conversation with a career professional. Our guest today, Jim Peacock, is the principal of Peak Careers Consulting, offering a variety of professional development for career practitioners, from the Facilitating Career Development class, online seminars, weekly career emails, monthly interviews, and workshops for career practitioners. Jim is a certified career services provider. Jim is also a trustee at large at the NCDA Board of Directors and a two-time president of Maine Career Development Association. In 2007, Jim received the NCDA Outstanding Career Practitioner Award. In 2020, he was honored to receive the Ken Hoyt Career Education Practitioner Award from NCDA. In the same year, he was also awarded the Mid-Atlantic Career Counseling Association Professional Contributors Award. Jim is the author of a field guide for career practitioners, helping clients create their next move. You can learn more about Jim at peak-careers.com. Do you know the difference between comfort zone, stretch zone, and panic zone? Jim Peacock will explain the difference and provide more tips to keep you successful. Thank you so much, Jim Peacock, for joining me today. I'm very excited and looking forward to the conversation we're going to have.
Yeah, I'm excited too. We set this up a few weeks ago, so I've been looking forward to it, Hoda.
Thank you so much for your time. The first question I ask every guest is, can you share a personal definition of a key career term that reflects the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I would have to say that, training, it's career training. That's the bulk of what I do. I'm not doing as much individual career coaching as I used to, but when I did coaching, one of the terms that I ended up embracing was career coaching. And when I first kind of went full time into Peak Careers in 2013, I didn't really like the word coaching. I don't know what it was. It was something about it. I'd sort of done more career counseling or career advising, but as I sort of did more of it and sort of found my own voice, I think the coaching really made sense to me. It really fit my style a lot more, where I often talk about nudging people to try things and giving let them, they need to own that process. And so right now I would say the answer to that question is career training. That's really the bulk of what I do, but my career coaching would be on the side, and I'm not doing as much anymore. I'm really focused on the training.
I appreciate how you described the nudging part. I love that. How would you define career training to people who don't know?
Well, career training actually is nowadays it can be quite broad, although when I think about training, I've always enjoyed presenting at conferences, being able to take sort of information that people may know a little bit about, but maybe need sort of more breadth or depth to it. But have always done presentations at conferences, and that's really where Peak Careers, my business, really kind of grew out of. Is I enjoyed that training. I love taking these topics and synthesizing them in such a way where people can understand some of this stuff that they may not have understood. So for me, the training is really about taking some body of knowledge and sort of being able to synthesize it to make it understandable, practical and understandable. I mean, I think, for me, if it's not practical, it's not worthwhile. It's got to be something that you can use. And of course, nowadays that's done face to face, but I've been teaching, it's amazing. I've been teaching online since 2002. So over 20 years, which is, yeah, it blows my mind every time I think about it. But that has opened up a lot of audiences, right? I mean, look at us. I mean, Calgary to Maine right here. But I've been teaching a lot of my seminars I have. When I think about training, I like to incorporate most of this face-to-face stuff whenever possible, but I also have some seminars that are or asynchronous. They're designed for the busy person where they can take a 5-week dive into a topic with other career people and actually have a discussion, respond to each other. So there might be an article that they read or a video they watch, but then they have to respond to a prompt. So there's that thinking that goes on, and then they have else is gonna post, and they have to reply to that. So then it's looking at it from a different angle. And I think whatever kind of training I do, I like to have it. I want it interactive, and I want people to be able to use it and actually do some deeper thinking rather than just read an article and post something. So training is quite broad. It can be a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, I appreciate you taking this on. You wanted to hear it from your perspective, so I definitely appreciate you explaining it to the audience and to me. The next question is about your a personal story. You can tell us your journey from the beginning till now, or just a personal story that recently happened, and embed with it a message that you'd like to send to the audience by being here on this program.
When I think about my personal story, I mean, I'll focus it mostly on how I kind of got into this career field. I was a high school counselor for 10 years, 11 years. And what I found in that journey was the fact that I really loved that career side to the equation. Not a big fan of the counseling side and a lot of the scheduling and all the other stuff that goes with the school counselor job. And I always kept gravitating to that career piece. And there was such a need. I mean, these high school age students were just needed so much more information, and they loved it. They were like, "Oh, I want to talk about this," and then the bell rings and off they go, right? And what was frustrating to me was there was such a huge need in the school, and I was in a fairly large school. I think there were 4 or 5 school counselors, and we each had 250, 300 students on our caseload. But there were all kinds of students that weren't getting career information. because we couldn't reach them, or because maybe one of the other school counselors wasn't really interested in it, you know. And so for me, the frustration came in that it was all one-on-one. And what I often thought about is, I mean, how are we ever going to reach all these people? You know, how can we provide better career services to a greater number of people? And for me, that's really where the training kind of came in. And I said, you know what, if I could train more school counselors or career service providers to do a better job, I can actually positively affect the lives of many, 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 many more people than I could just one-on-one seeing my 250 students. And I didn't even see all of them, you know. But if I could actually do the training where I could help school counselors just do a better job, and career service providers do a better job. And that's really where I started. I love the training piece, as I said. And I started with the Facilitating Career Development course, which was developed by National Career Development Association, 35 years ago or something like that. And that was growing. And I was still working full time at the time. I had left school counselor and became, again, I love the career piece of the school counselor. And so I kind of knew I needed to get out of that sort of structured in educational environment and get back to working at colleges. I had worked at colleges before, so I ended up looking at a community college. I was the director of advising and career at our local community college, and I got to create. It was a brand new position, so I got to create the office, and I loved it. And as that grew, I started expanding my offerings to these online seminars, and doing more trainings, and doing a lot more workshops. And so my business kept growing. I had no intention of ever doing a private practice business. I just wanted to do career work. But this facilitating career development class kept growing. I kept getting that, and then these seminars kept happening, and then I would get wanted to do workshops from other places. And I finally got to a point in 2012 where I had to I was working full time at the community college, 40 hours a week, plus doing like 20 hours a week for Peak Careers. And I finally just said, you know what, if I'm doing 20 hours a week with Peak Careers, you know, without doing a lot of effort, I probably can make it happen. So that's what I did. And I've always been professionally involved. I think professional development is sort of another core value in my life. And so I was instrumental in creating Maine Career Development Association, which is chartered through National Career Development. So I was the first president of Maine Career Development, and I ended up serving a second time in Maine Career Development. And now I'm involved with National Career Development on the board of directors. I'm a trustee on the board of directors, and I really it just allows me to begin to do sort of share that message, you know, of what our field is all about. So I guess that would be my personal story. And I think the message embedded in there is the importance of professional development and kind of trusting your hunches too, and kind of going, I never thought I was going to do a full, you know, do Peak Careers Consulting, but here I am, and it grew and developed, and you never know. You never know what's going to happen, but you have to trust those hunches and go with it.
Thank you for this message. I think that's important, trusting the hunches as well and looking for what interests you. With my mission to increase career literacy, of course, that's what caught my attention about your work. And then I went and checked your website, peak-careers.com. And quote from the website caught my attention that says, Jim is convinced that if career advisors have the right resources, they can successfully guide, nudge, and support students in their journey. And you kind of already started hinting about that when you shared your personal story. But the question is, what can we as career professionals do to make your conviction, this quote, a reality? How can we help you do that?
As I just said about the importance of professional development, I think one of the things that we all have to do, and this is really for any field, you have to continue to learn. The world changes too fast, too much. And what worked for you 5, 10 years ago may not really be what people need now. And I think when I think about, what can other people do? One, continue to learn, you know, and and really don't think that you've got all the answers, you know, because the I think the questions change, the whole environment changes. And I think we always have to sort of be at the point where, what else do I need to learn? And also not get into a rut on this worked for me, so I'm going to make this work for everybody I see. I think, for example, the Holland theory works great much of the time, but it doesn't work all the time. And that's why we have to have different theories behind us. We have to sort of be aware of what worked for these people is not going to always work for every person coming through the door. I love card sorts. I use the skills card sorts with many of my clients, but not all of them. Not all of them need it. And I think what we have to do is challenge ourselves to say, what does this person in front of me need? Not what do I want to give everybody? It's what does that person in front of me need? And so some people need a card sort to sort of help them put together what are the skills that I love to use. And then we can talk about how do you want to use them. Some people already have a pretty good idea of what skills they want to use. So those folks need something different, right? They need to know what challenge to take on, like JP Michelle's work. What challenge do you want to take on, right? That's a whole different framework. And I think we always have got to be looking at what else is out there, how do I stay current, and commit to professional development, and along with that, give back to our profession, and don't be afraid to give back. I think that's been, I think many of the people in our field are willing to share and stuff, but I think that's just got to be sort of an integral part to this puzzle. Is not only do we have to stay current and give back and keep learning and trying new stuff and kind of questioning ourselves, but then we also have to say, how can we give back? How do we give back to our community? How do we give back to our profession? And I think that's just a big part of it.
That's wonderful advice, and I thank you for it. I continued looking at your website, again, peak-careers.com, and in your About page, you included a video where you talk about using intentional serendipity. I'm going to ask you two questions. You can put them together or separately. So what does intentional serendipity mean to you? So if I were to go Google it, it could be different, but how do you incorporate it into your work to better serve your clients? So what does it mean to you, and how do you use it to better serve your clients?
Yeah. So my thinking on intentional serendipity really came out of the first time I saw John Crumboltz present at a conference on his happenstance learning theory. Crumboltz, Levin, and Mitchell put together this theory and developed it. John Crumboltz gets a lot of the credit for it because he's the one who kind of went on the road. So everybody kind of knew Crumboltz. They always call it Crumboltz theory, but it's actually, Mitchell, Levin, and Crumboltz really worked on it. But I love the fact it was a theory that was one of those aha moments where I was like, the career ladder works for some people. I mean, it worked for my brothers. My three brothers it actually worked for the career ladder. One of them is a furniture designer, worked in furniture design, and has his own furniture design business. Another one was in banking and has worked his way up in the state in banking. Another one's worked for the Catholic Church and has worked, so career ladders work. But those aren't the people we tend to see. Career service providers tend to see the people who go, this isn't working. And happenstance theory really was the first time that I went, yeah, that's people that are discovering things by accident and making pivots, big changes in their lives, in their career paths. And so I love happenstance learning theory, and they talk about creating luck. And that's kind of where I diverge. You can create luck. But what I really liked is the words intentional serendipity, because you have to be intentional. You have to take some kind of action. You got to put yourself out there, right? You actually have to do something, you know. And if you look at all the modern, any of the more modern theories, they all have they call it something different, but they all talk about doing something. And that's where that intentional, whatever that, does that mean doing informational interviews? Does it mean taking a class, right? I mean, it doesn't mean doing an interview, right, with Hoda, right? I mean, you have to put yourself out there. And so that's why I called it intentional. But the serendipity part is discovering things, be willing. Also, there's a willingness here. You have to be willing to discover things by accident. And so Crumbles and Company called that creating luck. And I was like, luck doesn't, I'm not sure it's exactly luck. And I kind of struggled with that for a long time. But I love the word serendipity, you know, because it's got a lot of syllables, right? Intentional serendipity. People, you know, I say that to people and they're like, oh, what are you talking about? You know, it usually gets their attention, right? If you just say, oh, go create luck, people are like, yeah, I'll throw some dice. But intentional serendipity, right? It's got a play to it, but it really is, there's a lot packed into that. You know, you've got to be intentional, you got to take some kind of action, and then you got to be willing and open to discovering things by accident. And I think that's really where a lot of the magic happens. And I mean, when you talk to people, you know, almost everybody has a story about saying, well, how did I get involved with hockey? Growing up, I grew up in Michigan. And how did I get involved with hockey? The only way I got involved with hockey was my buddies were playing. Did I actually sit down as a little kid and go, this is what I want to do? No. I was hanging out with these guys. They were playing hockey. I'm going to try hockey, right? I went to college and I was a resident assistant in the dorms, and then discovered that there was this whole kind of leadership program that was on that campus. I'll try it, you know. And I got involved. I was I was a president of one of the clubs on campus, right? You got to try stuff, and each one of those times that you intentionally try something, you discover that that's how I discovered about college student services on campus. Is I got involved with this leadership program. You know, had I never been involved with it, I would not have been exposed to it. It happens all the time. And so how do I incorporate that into my work? I think you have to have the conversation with our clients to say, this is there's going to be new things introduced. Nobody knows every job out there. And so how can you put yourself out to discover something? And how do you also be willing to and be open to discovering it, right? So even when people go for informational interviews, I always say, always ask what else is out there. If you couldn't do the job that you're doing right now, so I might be looking to be a school counselor, but if somebody came and said, I want to learn more about what a school counselor does, I would also just say, if you couldn't do school counselor, what other things could you do? What other things are out there? Had someone asked me that when I was a school counselor, I would have said speech therapist, right? And because school counselors don't often see the results of their work, I love the helping part of people, but a speech therapist actually sees the results of their work, right? So that's the serendipity, that things that happen if you put yourself out and you be willing to be open to discovering something new. So for me, it's a huge part of all the career coaching that I've done, and a big part of the training that I do.
I appreciate you taking the time to describe it to the audience. I know it's not a simple term, but it does help to understand, and it does reflect the values that we try to pass to our clients, is that it does have to be intentional and you have to put yourself out there. So thank you so much for that. I've got one more question for you, Jim. I work with young people ages 14 to 25, and I always encourage them to step out of their comfort zone and embrace new challenges. I know you're always embracing new challenges, and I see it on your LinkedIn posts. But what are some of the ideas or projects that you are looking to accomplish now or in the near future that shows you stepping out of your comfort zone?
I'm going to pause before I answer that, because I always like to talk about the comfort zone. And actually I have a blog, I could find it on my website, that talks about comfort zone. This guy who was taking one of the classes from me, he always called it, he talked about the comfort zone, but he also talked about the fact that there's not a lot of learning that happens in your comfort zone. But if you go too high, it's the panic zone, right? It's the freak out zone. But what I would like to talk about is the stretch zone. So the stretch zone is in between. So the comfort, if you're when you're in your comfort zone and there's not a lot of learning that happens. If you go too far and you're panicking, you're in over your head. But that stretch zone is that's really where the learning happens. And so that's why I talk about nudging, right? A lot of times you're just nudging. You don't want to throw them over because you might throw them into the panic zone, right? But you want to nudge people to get out of that comfort zone. So I appreciate when people say that, and but I always like to talk a little bit about that stretch zone, which is really where the learning happens. It's really where you discover those new things.
I appreciate your explanation and detail of that. It will get a lot of people reflecting on where they're at in their journey for sure.
You got to get yourself in that stretch zone. That's the key. So projects, things I'm looking forward to. I'm still on the board of directors for National Career Development, and I think that's a great place for me right now in my career, because I think one of the things that I really want to do more of is things like this, where you help people get the message out about our profession. I think where I really enjoy spending my time is, I would probably call it more mentoring. Even, I mean, the training is a piece of that, where training people to get to be better, to get more skills. But I tend to have a couple of different people I mentor, just to sort of, how can I help them get better in their field? I mean, it's really all about finding the best qualities in each person, and again, nudging them into that. How can you, what else do you need to do to get to sort of improve yourself in our field? And I think a lot of the efforts and a lot of time that I'm spending now is really about raising awareness about credentials, and National Career Development Association has a whole bunch of credentials, but those credentials are really about holding people accountable, saying, if I hold this credential, I'm signing off on an ethical statement. If I hold this credential, I have to have 30 hours or X number of hours of professional development. It raises awareness. One, a credential improves you as a person, because you're holding off, you're signing off on ethics, and you're signing off that I'm going to continue to improve myself. But it also raises our whole profession. And I think, whether you're involved with CIRIC up in Canada, or NCDA or whatever, one of the things that I'm working on, I write about, I interview other people, is about making a commitment to your own professional development, which is a commitment to our whole entire profession. So I just think that's a big part of what I want to do. And then the mentoring piece is really just kind of sharing stuff I've learned. I mean, again, I never expected to have my own business, and I accidentally made a bunch of good choices, where, we were saying, you were saying a little earlier, when I was asking you about your audience. I mean, you thought this was the direction you were going, and what you found is things don't always work the way you think they're going to work, but you got to be willing to sort of roll with those punches, right? I mean, what I thought when I got into full-time into peak careers, Maine is the oldest state in the nation, in the US. And I thought the bulk of my business is going to be working with boomer age people, helping them figure out how they want to retire or how they want to reinvent themselves. And so I made 500 brochures, and I put them in the coffee shops around town. And I went to people who were giving financial retirement advice and put it in there. And the reality was, I threw away 400 of them just a couple of years ago, because that wasn't really what happened. That just wasn't, it didn't happen for a whole bunch of reasons, right? And so I think you got to be, what I want to share with people, when I talk about that mentoring, is what are some of the things that I learned, And when people are faced with some of these, oh, this is really what I want to do, and something else comes up, sometimes you just need a person there to say, well, wait a minute, here's a different perspective, right? And I think that's really when you ask what ideas or projects do I want to work on in the future, I think those are the big ones for me, is really kind of at this point giving back to our profession, right? And trying to help people navigate that.
I'm glad and I'm happy to hear that. And what wonderful advice you just shared. We're getting to the end of the interview, but is there anything else that you would like to add or something that you hoped I would ask you about, but I didn't?
Well, and I've talked about it a lot because it's important to me, but I would encourage people to think about ways that they can give back to our profession. You know, these associations are run by volunteers. You know, like Maine Career Development is a group of they're people who are volunteering their time. National Career Development, there is a paid staff in the office, but the reality is most of the people are volunteers. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to do all that. And not every person needs to be the president of Maine Career Development, right? But we still need people to take names check people into our conference, our annual conference. Just check people in. And for you introverts of the world who are out there, I know you're out there. I'm not one, but I know your introverts are out there. I mean, what a great way to check people in. That's a perfect introvert volunteer job, right? You don't have to say a lot, but you get to meet every single person, right? And they get to see you. And so all of these associations need people like that to do these small things. But even the small things are part of the whole puzzle. And so I really encourage you to think about ways that you can get involved, and don't think they have to be big. Not every person needs to be on the board of directors for NCDA, but just find ways. There's lots of ways to get involved. It can be local, regional, national, whatever you choose. And I would just say, keep learning, you know, continue that learning hat, keep thinking about what else do you need to know in order to help your clients. So I guess that's the last thing I would say then.
Thank you so much. And that's very important. That field need us to be continuously professionally developing and to support the association that we belong to. And that will increase awareness about the work that we do. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining me today.
It's been great. I've really enjoyed meeting you, Hoda. We've chatted via email and stuff, but it was great, and happy to hear things are going well for you.
This is it for Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe join me to empower you to succeed. Our guest today on Hoda's Career Info was Jim Peacock. You can connect with Jim on LinkedIn. Jim explained the difference between comfort zone, stretch zone, and panic zone. How often do you willingly put yourself in the stretch zone? Remember, you can watch Hoda's Career Info on YouTube or listen to the episode on your favorite podcast app. To let me know if you are interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, rightcareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes. Please like, subscribe, share, and follow me, Hoda Kilani, on social media for more career info. I am your host, Hoda. Until next time, remember, your time is valuable. How are you spending it?